The last light fades. It didn't happen all at once. The fall of Earth was not a single battle, not a cataclysmic supernova of destruction. It was a slow, suffocating eclipse. First came the shadows, trade convoys vanishing without distress calls, outposts falling silent, entire colonies simply gone. We told ourselves it was piracy, navigational errors, or political instability. We lied to ourselves because the truth was worse. The Celtic Dominion was already inside our borders, dismantling us piece by piece. The Celtic were patient hunters. They didn't smash our fleets with overwhelming force. They didn't torch our cities into glowing craters. No, they cut the cord that tied our civilization together. They jammed our deep space arrays so our colonies couldn't see each other. They turned our great orbital shipyards into dark, lifeless silhouettes against the stars. They poisoned our sensor grids with ghost readings, feeding us lies until we no longer knew what was real. On Mars, we watched the lights of Earth wink out, not as a grand explosion, but as a slow dimming of the blue planet's orbital halo, one station at a time. Then the colonies in the Jovian system stopped answering. A week later, the Kuiper stations fell silent. Even the deep space beacons, which had burned for centuries without interruption, went dark. The darkness crept inward. It was not just the absence of light, but the absence of certainty. Without sensors, without communication, every void became a blind leap. We couldn't see the Celtic coming, and that was exactly how they wanted it. When their fleets finally appeared in the skies over Earth, the war was already over. They didn't have to fight us. Our ships had stranded in dockyards, our orbital defenses cold and powerless. The Dominion ships glided through our atmosphere like predatory shadows, blotting out the sun. They transmitted no demands, no declarations of war. The Celtic were conquerors, not negotiators. Their message was in their actions. Humanity was finished. But they underestimated one thing. The Celtic believed the dark was our grave. They thought stripping away our light, our senses, and our networks would make us helpless. They didn't understand that humans had been living with darkness since the first campfire flickered out in the prehistoric night. We had learned to listen in the dark, to move in it, to kill in it. When the last light of Earth faded behind the shadow of their fleet, humanity did not die. We adapted. We shared the trappings of open warfare, the reliance on light and power. We learned to fight the way the void itself fights, without warning, without mercy, and without leaving a trace. And in that darkness, something new was born. Not an army, but predators. Predators in the void. The first thing we learned was silence. In the early days, survivors clung to what was left of the old fleets, hulking cruisers, lumbering freighters, massive carriers designed for open combat. But those ships were monuments to a kind of war that no longer existed. The Celtic hunted them like wolves running down wounded deer. Their sensors could see our power signatures across half a system. Their weapons could burn through our hulls before our gunners even knew where to aim. So we stripped those ships down. We cut away the heat sinks, the reactor shields, the bulky armor plating that slowed us down. We learned to hide our emissions, to ride the cold current of space like drifting debris. Our new vessels were ugly, patchwork things, hulls scavenged from wrecks, drives stolen from abandoned mining rigs, life support systems jury-rigged from colony ruins. But they were invisible in the dark. We became ghosts. Our first strikes were small, almost meaningless on the surface. A Dominion supply skiff vanishing between jump points, a listening post found gutted and silent. We didn't care about the scale. The point was to show ourselves, not to the Celtic, but to each other. Humanity was still out here, and we still had teeth. Every attack taught us more. The Dominion's biotechnological ships bled heat through their organic armor. Target those weak spots, and you could cook them from the inside. Their fighter swarms relied on centralized control nodes. Take one out, and the rest scattered like blind insects. Their crews hated vacuum boarding actions. They were used to fighting in the glow of their hive ship corridors, not in the frozen, airless dark. We exploited every weakness. The Celtic began to fear the gaps between the stars. They could never be certain whether the flicker on their scopes was a drifting rock or a human warship running cold. Every patrol became a game of nerves. Every jump brought them into systems where the only sound was their own breathing, until the first railgun slug punched through their hull at 4 kilometers per second. We didn't just kill them. We unmade them. Their crews vanished without distress calls. Their ships drifted into the void without power. Their wreckage left to spin silently in asteroid fields. We denied them even the satisfaction of knowing how they had died. This was not the war humanity had been built for. This was older, primal, the kind of war our ancestors fought when the only light was the moon and the only weapon was patience. The Dominion had taught us the value of darkness, and now we wielded it better than they ever could. By the time the Kelta realized they were no longer the hunters, but the hunted, it was too late. We were already in their territory, already in their heads, already turning the dark into a weapon they could never take from us. And our predators were hungry, the heart of the hive. We knew the raids couldn't last forever. Every time we struck, the Kelta tightened their patrols, hardened their convoys, and replaced the lost ships faster than we could count. Guerrilla warfare kept us alive, but survival wasn't victory. We needed to break something they couldn't replace. That something was Kelta Prime's outer production ring, a belt of 22 living shipyards grown from the roots of their homeworld itself. Without it, their fleets would be blind, hungry, and bleeding resources for decades. The problem was simple. No human fleet had ever come within 10 light-years of it and lived. The plan that brought us there was reckless even by our new standards. 4 stealth carriers would slip past the outer patrol lines using stolen Kelta biosignature beacons. We'd arrive just outside the gravity well, deploy boarding teams to cripple the shipyard from the inside, and plant-shaped antimatter charges along the main nutrient conduits. In theory, it would kill the yard without touching the planet. In theory. In reality, it was suicide dressed up as strategy. I remember the moment our carrier Wraith of Dawn slipped from dark space. The entire Kelta system lay before us, a glowing spiderweb of living metal, each shipyard a pulsing, bioluminescent cathedral hanging in the void. Dozens of hive ships drifted between them like sharks circling a reef. In the center, the planet itself glimmered under a haze of red and blue clouds, its surface crawling with kilometers-long organisms that fed the yards. We were 3 minutes in before the first patrol stumbled across us. The beacon worked, until it didn't. A single scout frigate challenged our biosignature, and in that moment the void erupted. Beams of ultraviolet light carved the dark, cutting so close I felt the hull shudder from residual heat. The comms lit up with boarding orders, fallback codes, and the kind of swearing that means the plan's already falling apart. We didn't have time for stealth anymore. The Wraith and her sister ships unleashed everything. Railgun slugs the size of small cars, missile salvos trailing molten fire, EMP bursts that rolled across the yards like invisible shockwaves. Kelta hive ships swarmed in response, vomiting streams of acid-tipped drones that latched onto our hulls and began burning through the plating. I saw the Blade Runner vanish in a flash of antimatter when her boarding team's charges went up early. Our own team fought through tunnels of living tissue, each step in zero-G lit by the strobing of gunfire. The Keltas screamed in frequencies that rattled teeth, their chitin cracking under bursts from our rail carbines. We reached the nutrient conduits, massive, vein-like structures pumping bioslurry into the yards, and strapped the charges in place. Then came the countdown. The last thing I saw before the blast was the face of a Kelta soldier pressed against my visor, its mandibles clicking in some alien curse. We both knew we wouldn't live to see the end of it. The detonation wasn't light or sound. It was absence. One moment the shipyard were there, glowing and alive. The next, they were collapsing in on themselves, fire and plasma tearing through their organic structures. The shockwave hurled our carrier out of position, spun us end over end. Half our fleet didn't make it out. The rest jumped blind into dark space, hulls leaking atmosphere, drives running on fumes. We had just destroyed a quarter of the Kelta's shipbuilding capacity in one strike. It wouldn't win the war outright, but for the first time, the galaxy saw that humanity wasn't just surviving. We were carving our way into the enemy's heart. Shadows over the throne world. The Kelta capital had never known darkness. Its orbital rings glowed like suns. Its cities shone brighter than the constellations. We cut it all. Using captured Dominion codes, we slipped into their defense network and shut everything down. Planetary shields fell. Communications went silent, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the throne world was swallowed by true night. Our black ships descended through the void like falling stars, railguns thundering in the emptiness. The war didn't end in a blaze of glory. It ended in silence, in shadows, in fey. Humanity had been cast into the dark, and we had learned to own it. The galaxy would remember. When you take away our light, you only make us harder to see and impossible to stop.